The statement everybody knows the media is bad for society in relation to the video games arena is nearly always perceived to be true by parents. That is, that playing video games will obviously turn my child violent. But is this actually the case? Well, of course not. There are many positive aspects of playing video games in moderation, from interacting with other gamers on different platforms, helping to reduce the risk of Alzheimer's, and practicing hand-eye coordination with certain games. Psychologist and researcher Christopher Ferguson has said in the past, the effects of video game violence have been compared to smoking and lung cancer, despite this being thoroughly discredited as a nonsense statement. He adds that according to the American Lung Association, first-hand smoking is responsible for 93% of lung cancers. So it's obviously absurd to claim that 93% of violent crimes are due to video game violence or other media as well. Today I'll look at three main areas surrounding the misconception that video games are all violent. Firstly, moral panics and what surrounds video games in that regard. Second, the main myths associated with video games. And finally, the problems with the research used to collaborate that video games are violent. The reaction surrounding video game violence, and people labelling them violent, is seen to be a moral panic, something that has a total grasp over society. Goody and Nachman have defined a moral panic as the behaviour of some of the members of society is thought to be so problematic to others, the evil that they do or is thought to do is felt to be so wounding to the substance and fabric of the body social that serious steps must be taken to control the behaviour, punish the perpetrators, and repair the damage. We see this in regards to the R18 video games classification, with people stating that children will have access to these games, possibly instilling violent tendencies within them. With R18 propaganda manipulating the public opinion, Barbara Biggins has said that 80% of the people who support the introduction of this classification level believe it will actually help to protect children. So in effect, we see that actually no moral panic needs to occur. In the Week 4 lecture, Dr. Stephen Harrington discussed certain myths that were at play in regards to the video games industry. The myths surrounding video games have, in effect, aided the theory that video games are indeed violent. However, many of these myths can be proven just that, myths. One of the main myths that was brought up was that all video games are violent, which is often a one-eye view seen by those who find games, in a sense, stupid. However, the most popular form of game type amongst Australians out of sports games, puzzles, and the violent first-person shooter is actually puzzles. Now, I'm not sure about you, but I haven't come across a violent puzzle to date. This also has a connection with the percentage of gamers who play on mobile phones, with 40% of all gamers using their mobile phone to play video games, often only playing games to pass the time on the bus to and from work. This is only one of the myths surrounding games making people antisocial. However, the fact that 40% of people play games out in public, and the statistic that only 3% of gamers play a game for more than 5 hours in one sitting, show that in effect, the myth that gamers are antisocial is untrue. This leads on to the male versus female gaming debate. There is no disagreement that boys are seen to be the more violent sex. You'd also expect there to be a clear difference in the percentage of boy gamers versus girl gamers. In fact, Dr. Stephen Harrington has stated in the Week 4 lecture that there is a 3% difference between girl and boy gamers, with 47% of gamers in Australia being female. So again, we see that another myth has been busted. Not all gamers are boys, so therefore not all gamers are necessarily violent either. David Galtman has made reference to a major problem with the research that has been used in relation to media effects. In his 10 things wrong with the media effects model, Galtman has said that the media effects approach in this sense comes at the problem backwards, by starting with the media and then trying to lasso connections from there on to social beginnings, rather than the other way around. In essence, they attack and blame the media the child engages in this case video games, without looking at the child's identity, background, character, and so on. So as we can see clearly, video games are not always violent, and actually can bring people together. They don't make people antisocial. They're a good way to help pass the time, and in fact the research used to show that they make children violent is flawed, and no moral panic needs to occur. In essence, no. The media is not bad for society, even when it comes to playing video games.